The leaders of South Korea and Canada are set to meet in Seoul, marking 60 years of diplomatic relations, with talks to focus on security and battery industry cooperation. South Korea is to ramp up exports of displacing seafood while providing unlimited access to financial support for SMEs. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un orders the go-ahead for the final preparations for launching the regime's first military reconnaissance satellite. Good afternoon. The leaders of South Korea and Canada will be meeting today in Seoul for talks likely on security and battery industry cooperation. According to the top office, President Yoon will host Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Yongsan Presidential Office this afternoon. The meeting marks 60 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries and will center around their shared values of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. According to local reports, the discussion will likely to focus on military partnership as well as battery sector cooperation. The talks will be followed by a signing of an MOU, a joint press conference, and an official dinner. This is the second summit between the two leaders following Yoon's visit to Canada last September. And leading up to the Yoon-Trudeau summit today, the two sides held a strategic consultation on ways to boost their partnership in supply chains of key minerals and chips and the green energy sector. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji reports.
Ahead of the summit between the two countries' leaders, on Tuesday, 4 high-level officials from South Korea and Canada's Foreign and Trade Ministries sat down for talks. Seoul's Foreign Minister Park Jin and his Canadian counterpart Melanie Joly, as well as Seoul's Trade Minister An Deok-gun and his counterpart Francois Philippe Champagne, took part in the meeting. South Korea's foreign ministry said the 4 ministers shared their country's policies on economic security and that they exchanged views on ways to strengthen their partnership in various fields, including supply chains of key minerals and semiconductors, as well as green energy like hydrogen and natural gas. This was the first time that the meeting was held after the two sides agreed to establish this high-level dialogue in September last year, during a summit between the two countries' leaders. South Korea's foreign minister called the meeting historic, as this kind of 2+2 economic security dialogue is the first of its kind for both Korea and Canada with any other country.
It can serve as a model for other strategic consultation mechanisms that Korea and Canada will be pursuing going forward.
The country's trade minister also stressed that the dialogue will expand bilateral cooperation.
I'm confident that these meetings will deepen the strategic and comprehensive cooperation between our two nations.
The Canadian foreign minister, who has now visited South Korea 3 times in a span of just 8 months as a foreign minister, stressed that Canada aims to bring the bilateral relationship to another level.
We've always been good friends, but we want to be best friends.
The Canadian trade minister highlighted that bilateral trade volume is now at around $20 billion, and he's looking to expand that.
And I think what we want to build with our Korean friends is supply chain based on values, that would ensure more resiliency and less dependency on other regimes that would be less reliable.
Tuesday's meeting comes a day ahead of the summit between South Korean President Yoon and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, marking 60 years of the two countries' diplomatic relations. The Canadian Prime Minister will visit South Korea before heading to Japan for the G7 summit in Hiroshima. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Yoon on Tuesday met with Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska, who's visiting the country as an envoy for Kyiv. She requested more non-lethal aid from Seoul, where the president shares sympathy for the war-torn nation. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young has more.
President Yoon has expressed South Korea's solidarity and continued support for the people of Ukraine in his meeting with Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska, who has requested more non-lethal aid from Seoul. Presidential spokesperson Lee told reporters that the South Korean leader and his wife Kim Gon-hee on Tuesday met with Zelensky, who is currently in the country as a special envoy for her husband Volodymyr Zelensky. During their meeting, Yoon conveyed the South Korean public and government sympathy for Ukrainians and the families of those afflicted in Russia's invasion of their country.
무고한 인명, 특히 여성과 아동의 끔찍한 피해를 불러오는 그런 무력 사용 등 비인도적 행위는 어떤 상황에서도 용납될 수 없습니다.
The president also commended Zelensky's prominent role on raising global awareness and support for her war-torn country. According to spokesperson Lee, the Ukrainian envoy did not request lethal weapons from Seoul. Expressing Kyiv's gratitude for South Korea's solidarity and humanitarian aid, she requested more non-lethal military equipment, including those for mine detection and removal and rescue vehicles. She further asked that many South Korean firms participate in Ukraine's reconstruction efforts. Yoon replied that Seoul will actively support Ukraine through close cooperation with NATO countries and the international community. Over the nearly 15 months of war in Ukraine, Seoul has maintained the policy of providing non-lethal aid to Kyiv. But President Yoon told US media last month that he may have to reconsider Seoul's mode of support if Russia commits large-scale crimes against civilians or other violations of international law of war. In a Yonhap interview published Tuesday, the Ukrainian First Lady said Yoon's words were wise and she was grateful for his understanding. She also thanked Koreans for setting a good example and encouraging Ukrainians, deeming South Korea a model for recovery and growth. Zelensky further expressed willingness to invite President Yoon and First Lady Kim to Ukraine, saying the country is always waiting for its friends, though Yoon's office later said a formal invitation wasn't made. The top office says First Lady Kim also greeted Zelensky in a separate welcoming session, noting her Ukrainian counterpart's campaigns for children's education and mental health support during war, and reflecting on how South Korea, also as a nation afflicted by invasion in modern history, deeply emphasizes with the people of Ukraine. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
As South Korea continues to struggle with its slumping exports, the government will push to expand its key export items, namely displays and seafood. Plus, it would allow small and medium-sized companies unlimited access to safe financial assistance. Our economic correspondent Lee Dae-yeon has more.
South Korea's exports are set for expansion, according to the Finance Ministry on Wednesday. This was discussed during an emergency ministerial meeting hosted by Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho. Chu presented three major sectors that the country will focus on: displays, seafood, and supporting SMEs. He said the government will come up with a measure to bolster the display industry, as competition has been heating up due to a rise in relatively new players in the market, such as China. South Korea held the top spot in the global display market from 2004 to 2020 and is aiming to take the title back.
We will make core display technology a national strategic technology and encourage private sector investment. Financial support policies, R&D investment and nurturing talents will also be provided, as well as stabilizing the supply chain.
Detailed measures are set to be revealed by the industry ministry later this week. Strengthening exports from small and mid-sized companies was also on the table. Financial support for SMEs known as policy funds will be provided with unlimited access to these funds until the end of 2024. SMEs with exports of more than $300,000 over the last year will be eligible. The support comes as SME exports dropped almost 8% on year in the first quarter of 2023.
R&D support will be provided for companies with exports of over $5 million, while indirect export companies will be eligible to get policy funds, R&D, and smart factory support.
Smart logistics centers for SMEs will be built by 2025 at Incheon International Airport, while a global business center will be established in Saudi Arabia later in September to help Korean companies seeking business opportunities in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the country will also develop high added value seafood in order to reach the goal of $4.5 billion worth of seafood exports by 2027. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said it will boost major items including dried seaweed and tuna. It will also make efforts to develop ready-to-eat seafood meals and health supplements while fostering a variety of seafood items such as salmon, fish cakes, and oysters. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
South Korea's tech-heavy secondary KOSDAQ market has seen its longest sell-off by foreign investors in 11 years this May. Data from Korea Exchange on Wednesday shows that foreign investors net sold stocks for 9 consecutive trading days beginning May 3rd. That's the KOSDAQ's longest net selling streak since 2012. Foreign investors offloaded around 780 billion won, or around $580 million of stocks during that period. According to analysts, investors mostly dumped stocks of rechargeable battery and biotech companies amid disappointing first quarter earnings in these sectors, combined with the volatile exchange rate. Now, over in North Korea, as the regime is gearing up to launch its first military reconnaissance satellite, leader Kim Jong-un has reportedly given the go-ahead with the final stage preparations. Our Kim Jong-sil has this one.
Another inspection by the leader himself. According to state media, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Tuesday visited the National Aerospace Development Administration to check the final stage of preparation for its first military reconnaissance satellite. It's been a month since Kim made the on-site visit on April 18th, when Pyongyang claimed that its satellite had completed some of the final tests and is ready for launch. Just like last month, for Tuesday's on-site inspection, his daughter Kim Ju-ae also accompanied him. North Korea's state-run Rodong Sinmun reported on Wednesday that Kim has given specific instructions to the Satellite Preparatory Committee and has given a green light to future plans. The regime's leader also stressed the strategic role of the military satellite, saying it's to exercise the right to national sovereignty and self-defense against escalating military confrontations by the US and South Korea. Kim Jong-un also said the successful launch of the satellite stemmed from the regime's desperate demand for national safety. The Rodong Sinmun said the project was in a, quote, binding stage, meaning it's due completion. Some experts said it's possible the actual launch could take place sometime from May to September, saying North Korea will be cautious over the launch due to the cost of failure. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
In the meantime, Pyongyang appears to be preparing for a military parade that is based on satellite imagery taken by Planet Labs on Sunday and Monday, which captured between 50 and 100 vehicles in an open space at the Mirim Parade Training Ground in Pyongyang. This facility is known to be where the North parks vehicles and holds rehearsals ahead of military parades. But analysts are unsure which occasion would potentially be marked by a parade. One possibility could be the 70th anniversary of the signing of the Korean War Armistice on July 27th, which is celebrated as Victory Day in the North. As the U.S. government is facing a looming default on debt, President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy met again, seeking a breakthrough in the ongoing debt ceiling negotiations. While the two sides remain optimistic, Biden will cut short his Asia trip. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. President Joe Biden has held another round of talks on the debt ceiling with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Vice President Kamala Harris. While Biden and the congressional leaders failed to strike a deal on raising the debt ceiling once more to avoid the worst-case scenario of a U.S. default, there's optimism in the air, as McCarthy says a deal could happen by the end of this week. The Democrats, however, were not as optimistic of a deal being reached in that time frame, but they called the meeting productive and direct. The Republicans are refusing to vote to lift the debt ceiling unless Biden and the Democrats agree to spending cuts in the federal budget. With much room for discussion on the matter, the White House announced that while President Biden will leave for Japan this week to attend the G7 summit in Hiroshima, he may skip stops in Australia and Papua New Guinea. This as the June 1st deadline looms closer. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Tuesday warned that time is running out for Congress to lift the debt ceiling and avert a default. She stressed that every day the Congress is unable to strike a deal, there are increased economic costs that could slow down the U.S. economy. Yellen argued that a default would reverse the country's economic progress, sparking a recession, while at the same time disrupting services such as air traffic control, law enforcement, border security, and national defense. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Amid mounting safety concerns over artificial intelligence, the U.S. Congress held its first hearing on AI. Among those attending was the CEO of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, who testified that regulations are necessary for the wise use of the technology. Lee Eun-jin reports.
On Tuesday, local time, Sam Altman, the CEO of the company behind the creation of ChatGPT, spoke at a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee. Speaking before Congress for the first time, Altman called for the U.S. government to consider licensing and testing requirements for the development of artificial intelligence models. He called on Congress to implement new regulations to counter concerns related to the use of the technology.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. And we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening.
Emphasizing that government intervention will be critical to mitigating the associated risks of increasingly powerful AI systems, Altman strongly advocated for the formation of a U.S. or global agency that would license these powerful AI systems and have the authority to take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. The expression of amazement from users at the capabilities of the latest AI tools and applications has quickly been replaced with concerns surrounding the potential for these functions to mislead people, spread falsehoods, violate copyright protections, and even replace human workers. For the past several weeks, members of Congress have met with at least 100 artificial intelligence experts to craft groundbreaking legislation to install safeguards. There are no signs that Congress will be immediately implementing new AI rules, but U.S. agencies will be cracking down on harmful AI products that break existing civil rights and consumer protection laws. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has called for caution when using AI-generated large language model tools. The WHO proposes that clear evidence of benefits be measured before their use in routine healthcare and medicine becomes widespread in order to protect and promote human well-being, human safety and autonomy, and preserve public health. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Vietnam, the 2023 K-pop Lovers Festival, organized by the Vietnam Korea Cultural Center, concluded successfully over the weekend. At Hoang Kiem Lake Center, Lake Square, located in the middle of Hanoi on Saturday, over 30,000 people were there for what was the 10th edition of the festival. This year, there were K-pop dance cover and singing competitions for the 21 teams who had advanced from the regional qualifiers held earlier in the year. There were also other events for people to enjoy, including a Korean culture exhibition hall and a K-culture quiz show. The festival first began in 2013 and has been held every year except 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Construction workers are always on alert for potential collapses. Perhaps their working environment could be a bit safer thanks to a new development by a local research team, which can detect very small movements in the ground or structures that are common before collapses. Jong-un has more.
Accidents from structural collapses occur every year near roads or on steep mountain slopes, and the risk of accidents increases after winter when ice and snow start to melt. The same goes for construction sites. In order to prevent such accidents, it's important to notice very small changes in advance. Existing ground measurement systems are not utilized much in the field because they are expensive and professional data values need to be calculated numerically. A South Korean research team has developed what they're calling Firefly Sensors that detect very small ground movements and display them with LED lights. The sensor can be easily attached to the area at risk of collapse with silicone adhesive. It can even detect the slightest movement of 0.03 degrees regardless of the direction. The sensor's LED lights can be seen clearly even in the middle of the day and from up to 100 meters away. Observation data on changes can be transmitted via wireless communication, so an immediate response is possible.
Malfunctions occur due to vibrations when animals touch and pass by the sensor, or where reinforcement work takes place. We developed the sensors with the know-how of the Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology.
The developed sensor has an ultra-low power design and can be used non-stop for 1 year without needing to replace the battery. The cost of one unit is as low as 100,000 won, or around $74.
It's applied to slopes where landslides or falling rocks occur, and can also be used for temporary structure facilities, earth-retaining work, and structure dismantling sites.
The Firefly Sensor is currently being piloted and operated in a section of the GTX-A high-speed train route, a chemical plant, a sewage treatment plant, and a lava cave on Jeju Island. Researchers plan to improve sensor performance so that it can be used at earthquake sites as well. Jong-un, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Now, the United States Central Intelligence Agency has posted a video on social media platforms urging Russians to come forward with information, including secrets about the war in Ukraine. Appearing on Telegram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, the Russian-language video is 2 minutes long. It appears to be aimed at Russians who are unhappy with the path the country is taking. The video shows conflicted citizens, including a bureaucrat, secretly communicating on their phones with the US spy agency. Russian leader Vladimir Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov has responded to the video by saying that people talking to the CIA could be tracked by Russia's special services. In Germany, 5 men have been convicted over the theft of jewelry worth more than $123 million. The men, who have links to the Berlin-based crime family, the Remo clan, were found guilty on Tuesday of the 2019 heist at the Greenwald Museum in the city of Dresden. It's one of the largest jewelry heists in the country's modern history. Video from the incident shows masked thieves entering a gallery and using an axe to break into glass casings. Sentences range between 4 years and 4 months and 6 years and 3 months. 4 of the defendants received lighter sentences after entering a plea deal and returning most of the stolen items. However, jewelry that is still unaccounted for is feared lost. A 6th person on trial was acquitted. And finally, service on a Mexico City subway line was temporarily brought to a halt when a chicken got loose on the tracks. A video released on Tuesday by the local metro authority shows workers attempting to catch the bird using brooms and a garbage bag. The incident took place at the capital's Centro Medico station on Line 9 over the weekend. The chicken was eventually captured after a worker threw their coat over the animal. Authorities say train services were quickly restored. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It feels like the season of heat has already arrived. Gangneung saw record-breaking May warms yesterday with a high of above 35 degrees Celsius, and that heat stayed overnight. And of course, strong sunlight was no help, and many in the area head to the beach yesterday and perhaps today as well. Readings will go down a few degrees, but summer warmth continues in most parts of the country. And those who work in the sun need to take it easy today again. Prolonged exposure to the heat and strong sunshine will affect safety and performance. Drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. Now, highs have risen rapidly, going up 5 to 7 degrees higher than season norms in the 30s in most parts of the southern areas this afternoon. At least air quality will be decent nationwide. Now, rain is in the forecast in Jeju tomorrow at dawn before spreading to southern parts of the country. And along with that rain, the rest of the country will get some relief from unseasonably warm temperatures tomorrow. Now that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.